Have you ever been asked what you do for a living? It's such a normal question that most of us never think about it. Student, nurse, teacher, mechanic, engineer, manager. Our lives are built around jobs, our weeks, our schedules, even the way we introduce ourselves. But for almost all of human history, that question would have made no sense. There were no offices, no companies, no interviews, no first day at work. So what did ancient people actually do? Imagine waking up 20,000 years ago. No alarm clock, no boss, no calendar, no paycheck waiting at the end of the month. The obvious answer is that they hunted or gathered berries. But that cannot be the whole story. You cannot survive an ice age by simply wandering around hoping something interesting happens. In the 1960s, anthropologist Richard Lee spent years living with the Kung Bushmen of the Kalahari Desert. He expected to find people struggling to survive. What he found surprised almost everyone. The work needed to feed the camp may have taken only about 15 hours a week. Not 15 hours a day. A week. They may have spent far less time collecting food than we usually imagine, which only makes the mystery stranger. If they didn't have jobs, and they weren't hunting every waking moment, what exactly filled their days? Because whatever the answer is, our species lived that way for hundreds of thousands of years. A small group chasing an animal across an open plain. They catch it. Everyone eats. The end. But that picture has a problem. A single hunt might last hours. It might last days. It might fail completely. And even if it succeeded, people still had to butcher the animal, preserve the meat, repair damaged tools, gather plants, collect water, care for children, maintain shelters, watch for predators, and somehow prepare for tomorrow. The more archaeologists uncover about ancient life, the less it looks like a world of endless wandering. It looks busy. Not busy in the modern sense, but busy in a way that survival demanded. Stone tools tell part of that story. They were not used once and thrown away. They were shaped, sharpened, repaired, carried, passed from one generation to the next. Then there is Richard Lee's strange observation. Hunter-gatherers may have spent surprisingly little time simply collecting food. At first, that sounds like proof that ancient humans had easy lives. But the more you think about it, the less sense that makes. Food gathering was only one piece of the day. Someone still had to make the tools, teach the children, repair the shelter, keep the knowledge alive. Maybe the first mistake we make is imagining that ancient humans were trying to avoid work. Survival was simply too complicated. But that creates a different mystery. If ancient humans worked so much, why does their world seem so different from ours? Maybe the biggest difference was never the amount of work at all. Maybe it was the way work fit into life. Imagine following a small group of ancient humans for a single day. Someone leaves to gather food. A child follows. Along the way, an animal track becomes a lesson. A broken tool becomes a repair. A repair becomes practice. By the evening fire, the story of the day becomes tomorrow's knowledge. So what part of that was work? What part was teaching? After years living alongside hunter-gatherer families, researchers like Barry Hewlett noticed that children often learned by joining in. There was no moment where life stopped and education began. Knowledge moved through ordinary days. Archaeology may even preserve tiny pieces of that process. Researchers studying ancient stone tool sites have found piles of badly made flakes that may have been left behind by beginners learning a difficult skill. Think about that for a second. A child sits beside an experienced toolmaker. The first attempt breaks. The second one breaks. The adult keeps teaching. Thousands of years pass. And archaeologists dig those mistakes out of the ground. One of the oldest classrooms on Earth may also have been a place of work. The evidence keeps pointing in the same direction. Ancient humans may never have separated these roles in the first place. A hunt was not just about food. It was movement, teaching, cooperation, family, survival. Modern life often works differently. We drive somewhere to work, pay to learn, schedule time with friends, set aside weekends for family. We divide life into compartments. Ancient humans may not have had that choice, and perhaps that is why their world feels so unfamiliar. Not because they worked less, but because the work itself was connected to almost everything else that made them human, which creates a much bigger mystery. If ancient work was woven into life itself, what happens when work and life become separate? The answer may begin with a simple question. Why would someone carry their tools everywhere they went? A spear breaks. You fix it. A shelter leaks. You repair it. A child does not know a skill. You teach it. An animal is brought back to camp. People eat. The connection between effort and outcome was often impossible to miss. Anthropologists have noticed something similar among hunter-gatherer societies. Food is shared, knowledge is passed on. Your work rarely disappears into a system larger than yourself. Someone you know benefits from it, and that creates a problem for one of our oldest assumptions. We often imagine that humans naturally want the easiest possible life. But if that were true, why spend time teaching a child to shape a stone tool? Why repair something instead of abandoning it? Why carry those tools from place to place instead of making new ones each time? Archaeology rarely tells us what ancient people were thinking, but sometimes it tells us what they kept doing. The evidence suggests that ancient humans were not simply trying to survive the next day. They were maintaining a world where actions had faces attached to them. The possibility is that our ancestors did not wake up asking, how much work can I avoid today? They may have woken up asking a different question entirely. What needs to be done? And perhaps that is why so many ancient objects feel unexpectedly personal. They are not just tools. They are traces of people who could see exactly why their effort mattered, which makes the modern world feel a little strange. Because today, millions of people work incredibly hard and still struggle to answer a simple question. Who was helped by what I did today? Modern psychology has been asking almost the same question, thousands of years after those ancient toolmakers. Psychologist Adam Grant became interested in a simple mystery. Why do some people become more motivated when the work itself does not change? The answer turned out to have very little to do with money or making the job easier. In one famous set of studies, simply helping workers see the people who benefited from their effort changed the way they worked. The task was the same, but suddenly the work had a face. For most of human history, your effort probably did have a face. You knew who would wear the hide, who would eat the food, who would learn the skill, who would sleep inside the shelter. The modern world solved many of those ancient world dangers. Food arrives from strangers. Packages appear at our doors because of strangers. Millions of people cooperate with each other every day without ever meeting. But perhaps every solution creates a new mystery. Gallup asks workers around the world how connected they feel to what they do. The answers are often surprisingly low. That does not prove anything, but it does make an old question harder to ignore. What happens to a mind shaped in a world of visible consequences? When its own effort disappears into systems too large to see? The problem may be that our effort often disappears into systems too large for our instincts to understand. And that raises a different question. What exactly counted as work? For most of us, the answer to, what do you do, comes almost automatically. Teacher, mechanic, engineer. Our lives are organized around jobs. But for most of human history, that question may not have made much sense. A hunter could also be a parent. A parent could also be a toolmaker. A toolmaker could also be a storyteller. A child gathering firewood might also be learning, helping, and playing. Somewhere, an older hand is watching. Correcting, teaching, preparing someone else for tomorrow. The evidence keeps pointing toward the same strange idea. Ancient humans may not have divided life into separate pieces. There was no work life, family life, learning life, social life. There was only life. And inside that life were hundreds of small responsibilities, some dangerous, some ordinary, but all connected. The modern idea of a job is a surprisingly recent invention. It takes one part of life and gives it a place, a schedule, a title. Work happens here. Family happens there. For ancient humans, those lines were much harder to draw. And perhaps that is why the question we started with feels so difficult to answer. What did ancient humans do all day before jobs existed? Maybe the strange answer is they lived. And inside that life, they did everything we now call work. They probably would not have understood the question. The answer wasn't that they worked less. They hunted, gathered, repaired, taught, raised children, kept knowledge alive. Living and working were often the same thing. And perhaps that's why so many modern people feel an emptiness they cannot quite explain. Not because they hate effort, but because an ancient brain may still be looking for something it once understood naturally. A reason, a person, a tribe, a visible sign that today's work mattered. But that creates another question. What happened when one of them was taken away? A broken spear could be replaced. A campfire could be rebuilt. But what did ancient humans do when the thing they lost? Was their place in the tribe?